Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Future Teacher podcast. Last week we were discussing balloons and had some wonderful discussion about how to effectively use them in the classroom, so please check that out after this podcast if you haven't already. Today's April 10th, and we're going to be recording in the SHSU Education Building today. We have myself, Annie,
Adriana,
Macy,
Krista, and Hannah.
And today we'll be discussing in-task standards. Starting us off is standard number 1, which is about learner development. And Hannah, take it away.
This is a really important aspect of education in elementary students because not every student has the same learning style. Based on the University of Illinois, learning style is defined by the way the information is processed. For example, some students are more of a hands-on learner than others. So by acknowledging this, the teacher will be able to reach more of his or her students.
Building on this, we have standard number 2, which is all about learning differences. This ties into standard number 1 because it gives you a deeper understanding of your students and into their cultural backgrounds.
By better knowing someone's culture, it gives you an advantage into making connections with them and ultimately what's the most effective learning style to them as an individual to help them grow.
Speaking of that, Hannah, how would you determine an individual's rate of growth?
Well, based on some information that I found from the Texas Education Agency, teachers can determine the growth of their students by testing them in the beginning of the year, throughout the year, and again at the end. That way they always know how their student is doing and what they're understanding or having trouble with.
You know, I completely agree with that, Hannah. I love the thought of connecting with your students and getting to know their cultural background more to better connect with them in the classroom.
So moving on, we have standard number 3, which is the standard focused on learning environment, and today we have Krista to tell us about this.
The learning environment in a classroom truly makes such a difference. One important aspect of education really being encouraged throughout all levels is collaboration with others. Collaboration is defined by in-task resource of state dialogue as style of interaction between individuals engaged in shared decision-making as they work toward a common goal. Individuals who collaborate have equally valued personal or professional resources to contribute, and they share decision-making authority for accountability outcomes.
I would agree that creating a learning environment focused on encouraging collaboration is becoming increasingly vital for students to be successful in the classroom.
Absolutely, Macy. And as a future teacher, I did some research looking into how to create a classroom focused more on collaboration with one another. One common way to really get hands-on teamwork skills is to have group projects where students need to work together to present a cohesive presentation today. This is a very common practice in today's classrooms and can be seen often. One important tip I found useful from Concordia University of Portland was the idea of setting the tone for the classroom on the very first day. The tone you should set is that every question and every answer should not be made fun of. The fact that a student is trying should be encouraged, and no one should be disapproving of their thoughts and ideas. You should expect all students to encourage one another and have a positive effort towards all ideas. These two simple classroom techniques together will create a positive and accepting collaborative environment.
You know, Krista, I never really considered the importance of creating that encouraging tone in the classroom when it came to creating a collaborative environment. But I can see just how important it is for really getting all the students in the classroom to feel comfortable collaborating with their peers.
Exactly. By setting an encouraging environment, it really allows the students to get involved with one another and express their thoughts and ideas during group assignments without fear of judgment, which I love because that really lets the students get to know different thoughts and ideas that I might not be able to present them as a teacher.
And now we're going to be visiting standard number 4, which is all about content knowledge, and Macy's going to tell us about this one.
Well, according to the University of Iowa, it's important for teachers to understand central concepts, tools of inquiry, and structures of the disciplines they teach and create learning experiences that make these aspects accessible and meaningful for learners to ensure students have a good understanding of the material. Teachers want students to ask questions because it helps them understand how much their students understand.
You know, Macy, I really agree with that. It's important that students ask questions because this allows teachers to really know if their students are following the material.
I completely agree with that. And it's helpful for teachers because it allows them to know where to improve and what they need to revisit in their lessons.
Coming up next is standard number 5. The teacher engages learners in questionings and challenging assumptions. So why is this important, Adri?
I was actually just reading an article by Eric John where he was discussing this topic, and he actually made some very valid points. He talked about how this particular thing really makes your students really think about the information that they're hearing and not be so gullible and believe everything they hear. And this is so important not only in the classroom but in real life.
Following standard number 5 is standard number 6, which is assessment. Macy?
It's important that we as future teachers use a variety of assessments. According to the University of Iowa, it's important to engage students in their own growth and monitor learner progress. One reason being that it allows teachers to minimize bias in the classroom. Not only that, but it helps teachers guide students in their own thinking and learning.
And so we're almost done here. These last two in-task standards are something I know a little bit about, so I'm going to take it away from here. Standard number 7 is about planning for instruction, and one way to plan for instruction is to use assessment data. There are 2 different types of assessment data, which is formative and summative. And Dixson and Frank Worrell wrote a really interesting paper discussing the differences between them. Formative assessment is great for diagnosing a problem in a particular subject, such as a student missing a step on an algebra problem. By breaking the problem into a step-by-step analysis, the teacher can pinpoint where the efforts on a student went wrong.
So, Annie, that's stuff like observation, homework, and self-evaluations, right?
Exactly. Teachers can use this to spend a little more time in frequent problem areas of a topic until they're sure their students know it enough to move on. Summative assessment, however, is good for gauging how far a student knows a whole subject. It answers questions like, do they understand the material, and can we move on to the next subject?
Okay, so like a good example of summative assessment would be like a project or a class test?
That's exactly correct. Summative assessments help a teacher determine the pacing of their class. If a student grasps concepts and lessons more easily, then the teacher can pace their lessons a little bit faster.
Right, so if they're struggling, they can slow down and use formative assessment to pinpoint exactly where they're struggling.
You're right on the money. And similar to that, we have instructional strategies. Good instructional strategies involve monitoring learning. And how can teachers monitor learning? Well, they can use formative assessment. A good example of formative assessment would be like asking questions, doing homework, in particular putting questions using Bloom's verbs like we discussed last week on varying levels, which a student can then answer and see which ones they get right, which ones they get wrong, and use which levels of Bloom's to determine their understanding of the subject. Formative assessment is a good way to monitor student learning, as we discussed in the previous question. Amy Accardo and Jay Fuller's research also shows that it can help improve academic success in students with learning disabilities and students whose second language is English. By breaking challenging concepts up into smaller and easy-to-solve pieces, as a student works through the assessment, it's easy to see where they begin to make mistakes and where a teacher can focus their efforts on a particular area rather than reviewing the concept as a whole.
I really love that. Thank you for sharing your information.
And to wrap up today's show, we discussed the 8 in-task standards and how to better implement them in the classroom. I really hope this podcast helps other future teachers out there.
I know it definitely helped me.
Yes, I really loved the ideas for my future classroom.
Completely agree. I can't wait to implement these ideas in my classroom.
And Annie, thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thank you.